Robert,
I was waiting for you, man.
yeah, I was thinking about you the other day. I was watching the Charles Stewart documentary, the second part, and I was thinking about how, as a leader in the city, having gone through busing firsthand, experienced that, being a young person during the time of Charles Stewart, how it had to have affected the way that you lead. And it was such a different time. I was just thinking about you, man, and just thinking about all the lessons that I've gotten from you because of those experiences, of having to be a black leader, a leader in a time where it didn't feel like black folks in Boston had agency. And so I've just been reflecting on that over the last month or so.
It's so funny because a few of the breakfasts and lunches that I've had with folks over the last couple of weeks, we were just talking about back in the day, right? Like even back in the day when thinking about busing, and growing up in East Boston during that time, I never had a black teacher, like never had a black coach. So all you knew was the folks who are older in the projects, right? And honestly, and you envy them because they were great athletes or musicians and things of that nature. And I think of what busing did, which is, changed so much of my thought process, right? And all of a sudden having a black teacher, then having a black guidance counselor and somebody who could advise and mentor you. And then really, continuing to age and doing some of the work, and then being fortunate to meet a Mel King, being fortunate to meet Ray and Gloria Whitehammond, just being fortunate to meet folks, and they were activists, didn't know what that meant, right? Except they were standing up for our communities. And then again, as it evolves and ages, I think back, Amari, let's go back 12, 15 years ago when it was like you and I were probably two of the few folks in philanthropy, and then Bethia, and then others, and now you see this evolvement, like Andres, with you doing it, and to see so many black leaders running major nonprofits, Lee Pelton running here, Embrace, which I think at one point was a great idea, and what you've done is made it a movement. Same thing, Andres, what you're doing around the Boston Children Chorus. Like some people may have considered that as something, just for folks in the suburbs and here. Like you've reached out and made this something powerful. So there's incredible black leadership that we're seeing from the Ayanna Presleys into the city council. But it's been a hard road. And even though we're here every day, it's still about proving that not only that we belong here, but we lead here as well. So, and the Charles Stewart also is very personal because it's those things that I think that make us stronger as we continue to lead.
I'm curious, as a new person in leadership in this city, I've been here for 3 years, and I'm often curious at the young people that Boston Children's Chorus work with and how much of this history that they know and understand, how many of these icons in our community do they actually got exposure to. I mean, the amount of learning loss during the pandemic and the people that they couldn't see and couldn't experience is huge. And I've had a steep learning curve getting to Boston during the pandemic, but I'm curious to hear from the two of you, how do you think about the difficult times that both of you had to endure to get to where we are today? And how do we work with young people to tell that story, make sure it's understood, but that it doesn't weigh them down and they can actually fly and take off and fully take advantage of the potential and the opportunity that's been created for them? Because I think for me, seeing young people every day in the rehearsal halls, I don't think people are ready for the next generation. I mean, what's coming is a really incredibly powerful generation that we just need to allow them to fly and to just go. So how do you think about
it's so funny, as you said that, I have a laugh. One night when I was running my previous organization, the base, Amari, myself, Tony, there was a group of us, we were all getting ready to go out. So I said, can you guys all meet me at the base? So they met me at the base, and what I did was I closed the base. I brought all the young folks into a room, and they didn't know, and surprised them and said, brothers, all of you need to talk to these 50, 60 young people. let them know who you are, what it took to get there. And that night, we were just there talking to these young folks, and I wanted to bring a face. So when all of them introduced themselves and what they did professionally, our young folks will the superintendent of the police, or they're looking and seeing a lawyer, or they're seeing others. And then the crazy thing we have to do that we need to figure out more, like we bring ourselves together, but it is tough. I mean, for years, Amari and we were talking about this recently. Can go to places and ask for $1 million, right? Where I know a lot of my friends and don't think they can. So we still have work to go, but I believe continues to keep coming together and supporting. I think it's a start, but I think sometimes I get a pass a little bit because use that to my advantage, that I'm from here and I've grown up and the things that we're talking about, but we just have to keep bringing together and make sure that our young folks get a chance to meet them. And it doesn't always have to be a forum or an event. Like we can just do that, and if we plan to do more of that.
I mean, I think mentorship is important. I think Robert was one of the first folks to take me under his wing in this work in the helping sector, and I'm incredibly grateful. I think I had the opportunity to meet folks like Greg Ball, who works at the Embrace, and we became friends when we were in our late teens. And so I think that gave me an opportunity to see a side of Boston that I think a lot of folks who are not from here don't get the experience, especially over the long haul. And mentoring and mentorship is so important, and I think it's our duty to always reach back out to other young folks and give a lending hand, any way they can. And I think I learned that from Robert, who I know learned that from Mel King and Hubie Jones. So I feel grateful in that way.
And if I could add, and now Amari's doing that for my son. As my son's running a nonprofit, Amari's advising and mentoring and supporting him. So we say it, but it's real about how do you really pay it forward. And, and it's important for us, to make sure there's this powerful generation of folks out there, right? The only thing they're at risk of is succeeding. I really believe that. But we just have to make sure, to the best of our ability, with everything we're doing, that we're visible for them, and we're inviting them to sometimes things that we're doing and having as well. So I would agree, like this mentorship and really this love and support of this younger generation is so key and important.
Yeah, because this work gets tough. Because, especially now, it feels like leaders, black leaders, leaders of color who are focused on racial equity are under attack. And it's hard to not take that personal, and you also need friends, right? You need friends. Like we're human beings, we're not robots, and I think we do the work, but we're not robots. Right. We believe, we have families, we have friends, we have parents, and I think it's tough right now, especially if you are concerned with justice and racial equity and belonging. It's really tough, and so sometimes I'm nervous. I don't know what's going to show up in the news around one of my friends or me or someone in the community, and I'm scared for that. I'm scared for that. It's like this ghost that's always in the background in the work that we do.
I think anyone that's engaging in equity work without an economic lens stands at great risk. I think at the end of the day, inclusion, belonging, and acceptance, equality, equity, all of these words roll up to, in my mind, leveling the playing field when it comes to being able to make sure that you and yours are cared for, make sure that your story is told, making sure that you can have all the opportunities and that yours can have all the opportunities you want to have. So I have a lot of hope that there are movements in many different parts of the city that are working toward that. I also, I'm very watchful for the people that don't understand that that is at the core of an equity or a racial equity conversation. I think the outcomes for people of color are, the information, the data is there, is very clear. And I think there are a lot of actors with not the best intentions trying to hijack and engage in this act of victimhood that sometimes can be detrimental to the progress that we've made. So I'm very watchful for who is in it for the right reasons, who understands the information and understands what progress and success is going to look like. But that can be an unpopular opinion. I think racial equity is currently a scapegoat. And I think just because it is not going to change my commitment to it. But I do think we have to be very vigilant in making sure the progress we've made doesn't get rolled back.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it also includes paying folks who do this work in our organization, especially Boston being one of the most expensive cities in the country, let alone the world. I think about how my kids, my youngest is 18. How can he afford to live here, pay a rent, buy a home? This idea. I know brothers from Cambridge who grew up in Cambridge their whole lives and can't afford to live in the neighborhoods in the community in the city, not just neighborhood, this whole city.
That's right.
That they grew up in. And I'm so afraid that that's going to happen in our city, where we are going to get priced out of the city that we've built, where generations of Black and brown people have lived. So that's a fear. I think that's right. We can't keep we can't lose sight of the racial wealth gap and compensation and the ability just to live as a part of the work. It's important.
It's as we're talking about this, you're both just hitting on something, and I was just sharing earlier, 20 months into the Boys and Girls Club, a big part of our change is, for me, it's around talent development, right? It is about building this next generation of talent. We happen to live in a city, in a region where, if you get skilled, there's jobs, right? But we got to skill out folks. And so much of it for me is about really economic empowerment too, right? And equity. Amari, you hit on something that I think about all the time. I think about, how do we develop some of the greatest young people that come out of the Boys and Girls Club? Great young people that wouldn't or can't afford to live in the same city that raised them. Or if you stay here, you need 2 jobs and a roommate. So we have to look at this, right? And we have to do something around this, because it's so many other factors. It's the life expectancy. I mean, from Roxbury to where we're sitting right here, 23-year gap in life expectancy. A couple of months ago, the Globe is saying 30% of Black young folks are only reading at 3rd grade at their level, 20% Latino. That was statewide. What are those numbers locally? So are we developing this generation of young folks that are going to be able to be successful in the past? So if we're really talking about equity, we better do this now. And I think it's a new day. And it's a new revolution for us in the youth development sector, the community sector. The days of just social programs, kids hanging out, safe and feeding folks, that's good to do. But if we're not skilling and developing a generation, and I'm going to say this, Boston claims to be the best, the leader, the first in so many occasions. But we never put, and somebody goes in a back room somewhere and says we're the best in higher ed. We're the leader in activism. We're the leader in life sciences. We have the best hospitals, the best this, that. Nowhere it says that we're the leader, the best, the first, and the innovator on youth success. That's where Boston's going to reach its potential. When you look at every young Black and brown young person, from Roxbury to Dorchester, from us, from Chelsea to even Southie, and from Charlestown. If we don't see them as talent and we see them as charity, we will treat them that way. So philanthropy has to shift from a charitable mode to an investment mode. These folks know business. guess what? You're investing in your future talent. When we do that, folks are going to be able to stay here. And we do that, folks are going to spend locally. That helps the local economy.
Right.
Man, these are just connecting the dots that we all know. And when we do that, then our young folks and families are going to have access to the best in quality health care, which they deserve. So my belief in Boston is all of us are investing in this future generation because we're getting them ready because they will carry the city forward. Who would have ever thought, 15, 20 years ago that us three would be sitting down together, having this discussion and like it being out and being seen by folks throughout our Commonwealth. Man, it's a new day and we have to keep pushing that new day forward.
Yeah, the work of Dr. King is not done. It's
Never.
not done.
Never. And he would be challenging us to even step up to continue to do more. It's hard. I know so many great leaders of color who have come to Boston and after a year, 2 years, and some years just left, because this is a tough place. I think for me, folks in the community matter. And my big thing is stay involved with those community leaders, folks on the ground that know you show up and show up again. The easiest thing that I think some folks have fallen into that hasn't worked, you come to Boston and you think you have to adapt to the private sector in the business community. And that might be fine if it's if you want to start building some name rec on this. But if you're I really believe, if you're gonna really survive here in this city, you have to do both. But you need to start, for me, with community, make connections and partnerships. And even for somebody who's been here, it's important for me to stay connected to, you and Amari, both of you guys that I don't on some folks who say new. I guess you're in Boston after you're here 25 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But you're making a significant difference in our communities, and that's important. So I don't know what it's like to be new because I'm not new, but I've seen too many people who are incredible talent leave, and some great people like yourselves that have stayed, which is very important, for this city as we're building towards the future.
I mean, Boston feels like home to me. I can't
That's great.
imagine living anywhere else in the country. I know the streets. I got my favorite pizza shop, my dry cleaners, my friends, my people. I feel ingrained in the
Yes.
city, and I think it takes work. I think there's ghosts in this city that are not present in other cities, and so it takes a little while to see those ghosts. It takes a little while to identify those, and I think it looks different. I mean, we're the hub of the region. I mean, we're in New England, we're the major city there, and we're a city unlike others. I know a lot of places say that, but Boston is really a city like no other. It has the oldest park in the country. There's the greatest higher education institutions, and we've heard that. But we've also had generations and generations of Black and brown families who've lived here, who've come here, who've fought for this city, and I think we can't take that for granted as someone who's new.
That's right.
And you gotta be able to understand that, and that's quite different from coming from down south, which is where I came from, or the Midwest or the West Coast.
Yeah. I think for me, it's been an interesting journey in honoring the past and the history and those that came before and seizing what is today. The number of young people in the ranks of Boston Children's Chorus that I get to meet and get to hear their story and get to hear their passion, their desire for growth, for learning, for opportunity, that to me has been the biggest driver to really get to understand what gem this city is. It's really rooted in the people. And I think for an organization like ours that does work kind of, across the city, and we attract people from outside city limits, we're working across Greater Boston, it is both a blessing and a curse to have that kind of scope. Relationships. Can I bring as a leader of relationships and understanding Chelsea Public Schools, for example? How do we become deeply embedded? Partnership and our relationship is one that we are in it with them together and evolving and really serving young people. I think that they've been doing this work for a long time, and that we bring a small help them accomplish their goals, and that they bring a lot of expertise that we actually doors for me as an organizational leader, where I can show up and say, we're at this other thing, and we want to put that in service of the young people that you're already in community with. I think my experience coming to the country, I lived in Michigan and I live in Washington, D.C., parts of the world that will tell you that they have the answer, they have the solution, if only you just did. But I'm very fortunate to have landed with leaders in this city and this community like yourselves, who have always been asking the question, what do you need? How can I help you? Making it about the people that you're working with. And I think that's the key to being a leader and surviving in this city. I think you can say that Boston is difficult and is all the things, but when you show up right, the city shows up right for you, and that's been my experience.
That's right.
So I as much as we want to own how tough we are and how gritty we are, I'm gonna say, like, this city has been nothing but kind and welcoming to me. The institution that I lead has been around for a long time, and we are deepening the work that we are doing thanks to this city's and region's ability to welcome people and to say, yes, we're going to do that, and we're going to build on this relationship. So I sometimes a little bit push back on that idea that Boston is a difficult place for newcomers. And I know that I'm privileged. I know that my experience is one among many, but I think if you show up the right way, I think this city is going to embrace you.